Hey guys, welcome to Spiritual Journey. My name is Colleen Jorgensen, and today we're going to talk about February. February is one of the biggest months of 2026 as many of the planets begin to shift into new signs. And there's quite a alignment of planets that are going to move into new signs in 2026. Now, the big ones here are Saturn and Neptune in February. It's going to be followed by Uranus heading into Gemini, and then it's going to be followed by Jupiter heading into the dynamic sign of Leo. So we have a lot to look forward to. And how do you actually fit into all of this energy that is unfolding? And really, this year is very personal because we have Saturn and Neptune at the midpoint at this very dynamic degree of 0 degrees of Aries. And so that affects us personally and how we perceive the world and how we react to the world personally. So this is very much a year of pulling back your energy into your center of self and really figuring out what it is that you really want. Over the past couple of years, as we've been transitioning through this, we get this feeling, I guess, because we've been in so much water, that we don't know what we really want to do. And it's a wishy-washy, back and forth kind of energy that really drags us around and kind of leads us into a sense of misdirection. So February is a very big month, and how it impacts us around us and how we are reacting to the world around us as we enter into the major shifts that are coming across the world. So the big story in February is Saturn and Neptune. So Neptune enters February already in the sign of Aries at 0 degrees and spends the majority of its time at 0 degrees of Aries, which is the marker of the world chart. So it's got this energy that will impact the world, or like a domino effect, that an incident happens and then it just goes click, 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 and a series of events happen which actually begin to transform and change the world around us. And many of us are ready for this. Like, we're ready to get out of all of this Pisces, bizarre, weird kind of energy. Yet Neptune is kind of bizarre and weird and illusionary. It rules the pretend, right? So we're going to cross a threshold here, which is going to be memorial or stay with us probably for a little while. Oh, that was the year I changed direction and I started to do this. So it's really the birthing of a new reality, both with ourselves and the world around us. Now, Neptune at this marker has been here before last year, and it kind of wakes us up or breaks up some things. But yet, because it's ruled by Mars, we can kind of strike off into this pioneering energy over a dream or over an illusion or a belief system. And sometimes that happens, right? That one day we just get up out of bed and we just have a vision in our minds of what we want to see unfold in our lives. You know, it's like Eat, Pray, Love. She just got up one day and walked out the door and headed on her adventure. So some of us can actually do that, head out on a personal journey because of our belief systems or ideologies, or we're just tired of all the fakeness in the world. Now, soon after, Saturn comes along and steps in at 00 degrees of Aries as well. And this really punches into Neptune, even though they've been riding together for quite some time. And we could have felt like there was a problem or there was an issue going on, but we just couldn't put our finger on it. We just can't quite know what to do about a certain problem or how we're going to deal with a certain problem. Now, Saturn is very hard-nosed, and Saturn up against Neptune has really been controlling this visionary dream. And Saturn holds it in place, like it can't go anywhere. And Saturn is about the governments. Saturn is about the corporations or those in positions of power or leadership that are really hanging on to their own illusions and their own dreams, not necessarily the dreams of the world. So now that's what I'm kind of driving at, is now the world is stepping in, and what is the dream that all of us have all around the world. And this could really shift our reality from the dynamic of who is in control of my life and the vision that I have and how I choose to live. So this Aries energy is very personal. And because it's ruled by Mars, it really does allow us to get up and strike off on a new mission, a new goal, a new aspiration. Now, all of February, Mars is going to be in the sign of Aquarius. And that Aquarius energy is not just about groups and gatherings, but it's really the fabric of society and where society wants to head in the future. So this month in 2026 really starts to fire up our energy on a world platform, in a world social group together. And it's really motivating us into action and spurring us forward. So the support that we're giving, not necessarily to ourselves, but the support we're giving to our own belief systems and ideologies can ricochet all over the world with this combination. So it just like Iran is protesting, and you could see a sweeping of people protesting in defense of the mission of the Iranian people to gain their freedom and independence, which is Aquarius, or other groups around the world that are looking for this same, it can ricochet out, and all of the world begins to take part in this belief system or ideology of this group of people. Not unlike Minnesota at the moment, which is going through its own issues of control. And the people are looking for freedom and independence from that control. So the month is filled with these Saturn, Neptune energies, which are dissolving structural ways of being, and dissolving infrastructure as well, with maybe environmental impacts like flooding or storms and breaking down those old structures that are no longer of value to us. And that alters our reality in where are we going to live or how are we going to survive if your house has just been wiped away by a storm or flood. So the governments and the corporations in the midst of all of this are probably also struggling in how to keep the population captivated under some sort of promise or hope or illusion of that life is going to be better, that we are going to rebuild the old ideologies back to where they existed in the past. Because Saturn is the past. And so we have this illusion that we are vested in our governments and the structure that supports and secures us in the Saturn ideology. But really, when you put Saturn and Neptune together, you really do have an emperor with no clothes. The illusions that they're portraying to the people, and when it hits Aries, we realize that we're looking at nothing. The promises become broken and they dissolve. These two planets can actually dissolve governments, dissolve leaderships, dissolve businesses, and dissolve certain ways of the world structuring, the laws. But Pisces hasn't had any line. It hasn't had any consistency. So when it enters Aries, all of a sudden the line is drawn. And we know exactly perhaps where we stand in the midst of chaos. So we can also experience this month environmental issues going on with the world as Mother Earth is also impacted by the energies that are moving through. So we could have flooding, we could have fires, we could have disasters with the electrical grid, and we could have aviation issues, disruptions in the earth, earthquakes, really weird weather patterns moving through that are unusual. Warmer weather in some areas because Mars is here, and on thawing the winter. So we can expect mistakes. Also, things can dissolve and we can actually see the bare bones of something, which could actually cause a scandal. Leaks begin to emerge due to eruptions. And this can cause a lot of chaos in the system. So expect mistakes to be made. Sorry, guys, I think I'm coming down with the cold. Things to be hidden away, distrust, mistrust in the leadership and the governorship. You know, rules are kind of collapsing, which are producing a reaction. Control is collapsing. We're not falling in to the dream of what they're telling us. And so they could be making up rules at their own convenience. There's a lot here in February. So because Aquarius and Aries are ruled by some pretty dynamic energy, Mars, which is war, violence, aggressiveness, but also persuasiveness and diplomacy and how we act. But Uranus seeks rebellion, freedom, autonomy, and independence. So those two planets are really influencing what is happening in February and beyond. There's like a match that strikes and it just ignites this energy of rebellion. So we opened February with the full moon in Leo, which was yesterday. And of course, that was Imbolc, the middle point between the winter solstice and the spring solstice. Imbolc is, of course, healing. Imbolc is about seeing the light coming, the warmth returning. So it's good to light a candle in around this time and to pay attention to the goddess Bridget and her anxiousness for the return of Mother Earth's daughter. So this is also a time for us to decipher whether winter is going to last longer or shorter by the Groundhog Day as well. Now, the Leo full moon is really addressing royalty, leadership, the presidents, the prime ministers. And I find it interesting that the President Trump's wife opened her grand entrance with the film, which is ruled by Leo, and entered onto the stage with her own sort of autobiography. And the ego surges in Leo. It wants to be recognized. It wants to be on the stage and a desire to be noticed. So this moon was really up against all of that Aquarius energy, the struggle of society, and the lack of freedom in some instances. So Uranus is slow at this time, at the beginning of February. It's slowing down and it's really highlighting the need to break free or break through something, do something different. And so right away, before Uranus heads direct, it's just sitting here for just the first week of February, which can really ignite some of this ego from that full moon into action, into control, and be very, very unpredictable. So Uranus is also sitting at 27 degrees of Taurus. It's about to finish off its journey in Taurus, and Taurus is an earth sign, which rules those things like cryptocurrencies, money, the financial markets, the agricultural markets, and the food industry. So here we have it sitting on the fixed star of Algol, and we've seen Bitcoin drop quite drastically. And Algol is a very evil star, which means that heads can roll. We could lose our minds. And it's a very dangerous star, as we've seen with some of the attacks in Minnesota. It's a very unpredictable and can be quite disturbing. Now, shortly after this, on February 6th, just after Uranus moves into direct motion and is still just gearing up, Mercury is going to enter Pisces. And there's an interesting thing that's kind of going on with these planets as they're shifting into Pisces, is they're all going to square off with Uranus. So the day before Mercury moves into Pisces, he squares off with Uranus on the 5th. And that could really trigger something, arguments, personal arguments, a real organization, and the word gets out to get moving, get going on some of these marches or protests. But once Mercury falls into Pisces, it's there for a long duration because Mercury is going to go retrograde, and it doesn't come out of Pisces until April 15th. So it's got a long haul, and it enters its shadow in this period as well. So we are here for a long time. And Mercury in Pisces is kind of like vague. It's communicating, but not directly. It goes around things, it skirts things, it doesn't come out with it. So it can give the appearance that somebody is lying or not being truthful. And sometimes it's just an automatic thing that we don't see the point in explaining ourselves to great lengths, or it just doesn't seem relevant. But to other people, it could be quite meaningful and quite impactful. So we need to be cautious as we transverse Mercury through Pisces, because Mercury, of course, is the merchant. And the merchant does trade agreements, negotiates, does agreements. And here we have Mercury in Pisces in this whimsical thinking of illusions, delusionment, and we can be swept into things that aren't necessarily truthful. And yet it's ruled by Neptune, which is in the sign of Aries. And so deals can break up, off, just boom. It's good. It's good energy if you're writing a book, if you're full of imagination, if you're very artistic. The muses visit us when Mercury is in Pisces. We can get swept away in believing something that isn't true. So you have to watch for scams and scandals and cults and all of those things. And we can get swept away with a promise or a belief of something. But because Mercury is heading retrograde, we may question that promise or question that ideology that somebody is giving us when Mercury goes retrograde. Something has to be reviewed, because with all this Pisces energy over the last 2.5 years with Saturn there, nothing is what it seems to be. We are being misled, misdirected. And so Mercury here is kind of, I feel, is transversing all of the degrees of Pisces, where Saturn has been journeying for the last 2.5 years, just as Saturn moves out of Pisces into Aries, to kind of make us sit back and say, what have we been doing for 2.5 years? And we start to try and figure out the puzzle. We start to try and get rid of our muddled thoughts in this wishing and hoping and believing that things will get better. And we work through some of the bizarre events. So if you've been in situations for the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years, trying to figure out what exactly has been going on, you could really take this time through February when Mercury stations retrograde on the 26th of February to go, okay, I want to sit down and really figure this out. For some of you, this is just great to plan vacations to the ocean or to just bide your time and laze around and let your mind wander. But Saturn and Neptune are highly involved here. They're going to be at the midpoint between Uranus and Pluto, which is in a trine, and they're going to create this magic triangle. And so they're merging their energies together to create concrete ideas when in Aries, concrete plans, or concrete visions for the future. And Mercury is kind of like spurring that. What can I think of? Spurring us to react to some of these bizarre monologues that are emerging and calling people out on them. So Mercury is going to enter his shadow on February 11th, and he's going to join the North Node. And this is very much about a new vision for the future. By February 10th, now Venus is going to enter into Pisces, and she loves it there. She loves the glamour, the glam of it. And she's going to square off with Uranus on the 8th of February. And this kind of pushes us into this creation or creativity energy. So we have Mercury there. It's going to go retrograde, like replanning the fashion model or replanning the design. And then we have Venus here, which loves to create. So this can be a very personal experience because they're both ruled by Neptune. And so that vision that you have personally to create something can really come to the forefront and then be reviewed as Mercury stations retrograde. So this really is a time to seize your own control, your own vision for the future, your own steps of how you're going to get there, and what it is that you really aspire to. So we're going to really make some decisions also through here into stabilizing our lives and crystallizing our motivations without being swept away by bizarre rules and regulatory systems or somebody saying, no, you can't do that. And we're going to move forward here. Now, Neptune in Aries sees quite clearly. Saturn in Aries is very karmic. Personally, it says take personal responsibility for what you are doing. That other people may not be so motivated to jump on your wagon of a dream. They may have their own dreams, their own visions. And does somebody have to sacrifice in order for both of those visions to become a reality? Sometimes this can create living in our own imagination, in our own illusions. But you need to pull back that energy to make sure that karmic energy isn't manifesting. And there could be karmic energy manifesting for certain leaders or governments or corporations that have led somebody down the garden path and have not fulfilled their obligations in their duties as a leader. That can very much become a reality. What makes February more powerful is we're in eclipse season. So the energy 2 weeks before an eclipse and 2 weeks after an eclipse really ramps up the energy. Eclipses are wild cards. They bring about major events to transpire. So here we have Neptune and Saturn on the world axis with that domino effect, that ricochet energy. And then we have an eclipse. And we not only have an eclipse, but we have an eclipse in the sign of Aquarius. This is the first eclipse of 2026, and it is a new moon at 28 degrees of Aquarius. And we have the Chinese New Year, which is going to usher in the fire horse. Now, the fire horse doesn't like the matrix. It's wild. Just try and go catch a wild horse. So this is full of energy, full of fire, full of brimstone. And it's going to move quickly, very, very fast. Now, this is the first eclipse in Aquarius. It is about the collective, the commonality that we all share as a society. It is about the internet or technologies that bring us all together. It is about the mind, the genius of the mind, which produces inventions, necessity. It's about genius, about social unrest, not because we want to hit the streets and become renegades, but because we want what we have always wanted: liberation, constitutional rights, humanity on an equal platform. That is what we've always fought for, the population. And we've never fought for anything else. The people haven't fought for anything else. The leaders have fought for control and land, dictatorship, governance, royalty. But the people have never done that. The people have always fought for unity, peace, agreements, equal rights, humanity as a whole living organism. Therefore, Aquarius is unpredictable, rebellious, full of riots, because it wants to be released from the constraints of the dominance of the rulerships. It needs space. It wants movement. It wants to breathe. It wants to be spontaneous, energetic, and therefore the earth shakes under it. It wants to release itself from oppression. So when we think of Aquarius and the future, you have to think of what that means to you as an individual, as a person, and where it lands in your chart. Where is Aquarius? So this is a really firing up a lot of energy. It's really triggering the new era to emerge at a very fast pace. So because we have Uranus that rules Aquarius in the final journey of Taurus, we also have currency issues emerging. The dollar, the financial markets, alternative ways currencies. And these can all be very unpredictable. So we have this energy that is who and who is doing what with February's energy. Now, by February 18th, the sun moves into Pisces. And I have always said that Pisces is the energy of the undoing, that we're unraveling just before we head into a new direction in Aries. This is a time of stopping and saying, okay, I think I'm done with this now. I think the end is upon me, and I just don't want to do this anymore. So I purposefully or unintentionally unravel it. And this brings us into new realizations of our goals and our aspirations. And it's like wrapping up those loose ends before we draw that line or close the door. Because I've always said 2026 is the year of the threshold, the year where we walk from one space into the next space. And the world opens up to a new reality. Now, February 22nd, of course, Venus in Pisces is going to trine with Jupiter at 15 degrees of Pisces and Cancer. That is a very pleasant energy to begin to close the month just before Mercury heads into retrograde. Now, Jupiter aligns with the brightest star in the universe, Sirius, which was very acknowledged in Egyptian time, as well as the Persians acknowledged Sirius, the bright star. And it's a fertile opportunity. It brings expansion to some of that creativity that you are realizing that you hold within you. And so this is a very auspicious month. It can be very challenging, especially if you're throwing your energy outward towards other people. Now, Saturn is going to, on Valentine's Day, is going to step into Aries. And Valentine's Day is, of course, about relationships. And Venus is going to be in Pisces, and Venus is going to head towards that trine with Jupiter at the latter part of the month. So it's kind of realizations. Saturn commitments are made most likely at this Valentine's Day. And it is the beginning of a new relationship, perhaps the beginning of new initiatives, or the beginning of gaining control of your own life. So this is personal now, and it is connected to that very liberal energy with Mars moving through Aquarius, connected to Uranus, which is in the latter degrees. Is this worth my time? Is it of value to me to be doing this and to be committing to this for the long haul? This is a personal engagement with yourself and how committed you're going to be in the long term. And we have a little while to do that, to make your dreams a reality. We have 2.5 years, just about 3 years as Saturn transverses over through Aries. But we're making decisions here. We're stabilizing, and we're making those commitments to ground ourselves into a new promise, a promise to yourself. So this is a very important month unfolding, and it is a very reality energy of what is real and what isn't real that we really have to pay attention to. So in my next video, I'm just going to quickly pull some cards because I think you're probably a little bit sick of listening to me. And we will step into the next video with some personal horoscopes right away. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.